Get out of this house within 5 days, you cheating woman. My husband, Cody, shouted those words at me in front of our relatives, his voice full of rage. Hidden in his words was a plan to drive me out of our home. He had spread a lie that I was unfaithful, trying to gain sympathy from everyone while covering up his own affair. His family, too, sided with him, casting accusing glances my way. It was as if they truly believed I had committed some terrible sin. But as I looked at them, pretending to understand nothing, I smiled bitterly inside. They had no idea that I already knew about his betrayal, nor that I had the evidence to prove it. Though anger and sadness swirled inside me, I had no intention of showing it. I remained calm, waiting patiently for my moment to strike, because the next scene he would witness would change his life forever. Oh, 5 minutes should be enough. I smiled calmly, locking my gaze with Cody's. Your lover is on her way to pick you up. At that moment, Cody's face turned pale with shock and fear, and a wave of tension spread through the relatives. It only took a brief moment for him to realize that he had been arrogantly ignorant, and that he had no idea of the fate awaiting him. I was certain that his world was about to collapse, piece by piece. My name is Nadia. Cody and I had been together since college, and married after 10 years of dating. Our relationship was something others envied. We understood and supported each other, always chasing the same dreams. That was our normal life. After we got married, he became consumed by his demanding job. His work hours grew longer, and it became common for him to come home late at night. Still, I was content, waiting for him to return home and spending peaceful moments with our children. When they were young, I decided not to work and instead dedicated myself to raising them, believing it was my duty to support him. Cody, welcome home. You're late again today. Yeah, I've got a ton of work piled up, he would say, collapsing onto the living room sofa, his face tired and worn. Seeing how exhausted he was, I tried my best to comfort him, cooking his favorite meals and creating a relaxing atmosphere. But at some point, his attitude began to change. Maybe it was the stress of work, but he started saying heartless things to me. Hey Cody, is everything okay lately? Okay. What do you mean? Well, you just seem tired, and I was worried. If you've got time to worry about me, why don't you try taking better care of the house? His words pierced my heart with a sharp pain. He never used to talk to me like that. I couldn't understand what had changed him so much. After that, Cody's business trips started increasing suddenly. He used to spend weekends with the family, but now he was hardly ever home, even on weekends. At first, I told myself, it's just work. It can't be helped. But over time, my unease grew stronger. One day, I finally decided to confront Cody. Cody, are these really business trips? You've never had this many before. He hesitated for a moment, then looked away as he replied, it's work. Are you doubting me? Or do you want me to stay home all the time? If I did, how would I support you and the kids? You don't have to put it like that. It's annoying to be doubted when I'm already exhausted. At that moment, I knew he was hiding something, but I didn't have the courage to press him further, and I let the conversation drop. To the outside world, our marriage might still appear to be going smoothly, but I could feel it. I knew that things couldn't go on like this. Something had definitely changed. I could feel the distance between us growing with each passing day, and I didn't know what to do. I began questioning the purpose of staying together as a family, but I held on for the children's sake. Every now and then, when Cody came home, he would bring gifts that made the kids happy, and I'd try to convince myself everything was fine. But lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The suspicion that Cody was hiding something grew stronger by the day. One day, Cody left the house, claiming it was for another business trip. That day, he seemed unusually anxious and avoided making eye contact with me. It only fueled my worry. It was then that I decided to start investigating his actions little by little. The next day, I happened to run into one of his coworkers, someone who often worked alongside him. When I asked him about Cody, I had a feeling I already knew what he was going to say. "Oh, Cody went on that business trip alone." When I asked, the coworker looked slightly surprised before replying. "There's no business trip scheduled," he said, and I felt a cold sweat break out. Cody had actually requested to work from home. At that moment, my whole body went cold. There was no doubt he was having an affair. He had been lying about business trips, staying at his lover's house instead. My heart filled with a mix of anger and sadness, but I resolved to stay calm. Letting my emotions take over wouldn't solve anything. I decided to set a trap for Cody. To get a clearer picture of his actions, I started paying close attention to the timing of when he left the house. On the day he claimed to be going on another business trip, I discreetly followed him to see where he was really going. Sure enough, instead of heading straight to the office, he drove in a completely different direction. I kept my distance, trailing him carefully. Eventually, he entered a residential area and parked in front of a house. No way. When I saw him walk into the house, I knew there was no longer any room for doubt. But it wasn't the right time to confront him just yet. I took photos of the house and decided to wait until he came back out. A few hours later, when he finally left, I quietly started my car and drove away, making sure he didn't notice me. When he returned home, he acted like nothing had happened, but I felt a surge of frustration seeing him pretend so effortlessly. Instead of showing it, I focused on how I would expose him. I decided to check if there was any evidence on the social media accounts we both followed. I went to Cody's page and started looking at the accounts of women he followed. Many of their profiles were public, so I carefully went through them, searching for clues. As expected, I found messages between him and one particular woman. The moment I saw them, something inside me snapped. "I can't wait for our next trip together." One of the messages said, "How careless." I knew then that I couldn't let this slide. While I was plotting my revenge, an unexpected person reached out to me on social media. This individual would be crucial to my plan for getting back at him. He needed to understand just how resolute I had become. As we began working on the details, something happened sooner than I expected. It was time for the first phase of my revenge to be executed. On the morning of Christmas break, I headed to my in-laws' house with a heavy heart. It was the third year of this annual tradition since our marriage, and to be honest, I wasn't looking forward to it. The men in Cody's family, especially his father Taylor, always had an air of condescension. Cody and Taylor often made me the subject of their conversation, eyeing me as if I were an object to be judged. When we arrived at the house, Taylor greeted us at the door. "Oh, Nadia's here. Cody, is your wife even useful?" Both morning and night, from his very first words, I could hear the sneering tone. I sighed internally but greeted him with a polite smile. "Thank you for having us. I look forward to spending the holidays with you this year as well." Taylor brushed off my words and turned to Cody. "Yay, things are fine," Cody said, puffing up with a sense of superiority in front of his father, looking down on me. That was always the most unbearable part of this yearly visit. Meanwhile, Cody's mother, Margaret, and his sister, Linda, were busy in the kitchen. I enjoyed talking with them much more than being with the men. It was far more comfortable. However, that day was different. Taylor and Cody started talking in low voices, with Taylor initiating the conversation. "Cody, you'd better deal with Nadia soon, before your position gets any more precarious." A chill ran down my spine at Taylor's words. I had no idea what he was implying, but the thought that Cody might be preparing to betray me crossed my mind. Cody nodded at Taylor's words, casting a quick glance in my direction. "Yay, I'll think of something," Cody replied. Taylor laughed and turned to me with a smirk. "Nadia, you'd better watch out. Men are always scheming, even when they seem quiet." Inside, I clenched my fists, but I kept a calm smile on my face as I responded, "You're right, Taylor." We moved into the living room, where the rest of the relatives were gathered. As usual, the women were busy in the kitchen, while the men lounged on the sofas, drinking, and chatting. Taylor stood up and addressed the room. "Hey, everyone. Apparently, Cody's wife has been cheating." The room fell silent for a moment, and all eyes turned toward me. "What are you talking about?" I raised my voice in shock, but Cody continued as if it were nothing. "She's been acting suspicious lately. Seems like she's got a lover." The relatives looked astonished, but slowly they began to nod in agreement with Cody's words. Expressions of disbelief, judgment, and disgust started filling the room as they hurled words like unbelievable, shameful, and a cheating woman is unforgivable, which pierced my ears. I wanted to defend myself right then and there, but I held back. I could sense how meticulously Cody had set this all up, and I forced myself to stay composed. Then Cody pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket and shoved it in front of me. It was a divorce application. "You have 5 days to get out, cheater." He looked down at me with a triumphant expression. Taylor nodded in satisfaction, and the rest of the relatives silently showed their agreement. They were united in their efforts to get rid of me. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Keeping my composure, I spoke calmly. 5 days. I won't need that long. 5 minutes will do. Your mistress is on her way." Cody's face twisted in shock. "Huh? What are you talking about?" His voice wavered with uncertainty. I pulled out my phone and tapped the number I had prepared in advance. As soon as the call connected, I spoke coolly to the person on the other end. "Hello, could you come over now? Cody seems to have something he'd like to discuss with you." My voice echoed through the room, and his face turned pale. The relatives, now bewildered, were left speechless. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Margaret answered it and returned to the living room with a confused expression. She hesitated, then told Cody that a woman outside was asking for him. Cody was at a loss for words. Visibly trembling, I stood up and walked to the door to greet the woman. "Thank you for coming. I think Cody owes us all an explanation now, don't you?" Her name was Misty, Cody's mistress. She was also the person who had contacted me that day. Misty entered the house, her face betraying her confusion, as she turned to look at Cody. "Cody, what's going on? Didn't you tell me your parents passed away when you were young? That you grew up in poverty at an orphanage?" All eyes in the room shifted to Cody. Misty continued, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You said you had to take care of your younger brothers and couldn't afford any luxuries. Who are these people? What's with all this extravagant food? Where are your younger brothers?" Her questions came at him one after another. He was unable to respond, his mouth opening and closing with no words coming out. At that moment, the doorbell rang again. I was momentarily puzzled, but when I opened the door, I found another woman standing there. Her name was Aria. To my surprise, she was also one of Cody's mistresses. I guided her into the living room, and the situation descended into further chaos. Aria, too, confronted Cody, her voice a mixture of shock and anger. She had also realized that everything Cody had told her was a lie. Cody had spun her a tale about being abandoned by his parents as a child and living a lonely, miserable life, longing for a real family. But the bustling family and the lavish meal before her were in stark contrast to that story, and Aria was stunned. Her words revealed that he had been deceiving her, and the relatives were now beginning to piece together the lies Cody had told. He could feel the web of deceit he had carefully constructed collapsing in an instant, leaving him trapped and shaking in fear. Yes, Cody had played the part of a tragic figure, using lies to evoke sympathy. The entire family glared at him, suspicion growing as whispers spread through the room. "I'm sorry, Nadia, for inviting her without asking. But while I was gathering evidence of his cheating, I found out about her, and we decided to work together." "I see. It makes sense now." "No, wait. I don't understand. Cody, what's going on? Didn't you say Nadia was sneaking out at night and neglecting everything? That you wanted to punish her and get rid of her? Are their stories true? Have you been lying to us this whole time?" Even Taylor, with a hardened expression, was now staring down at Cody. Cody, visibly panicking, stammered as he tried to explain himself. "No, it's not. This is all a misunderstanding. I was just a misunderstanding." "Cody, what exactly are you saying is a misunderstanding? Everything you've told us has been a lie," Misty shouted, and the other mistresses joined in, pressing him for answers. Cody found himself backed into a corner, unable to utter another word. As I calmly observed the scene unfolding, I took out my phone and cast the incriminating footage of Cody and Misty's secret meetings onto the large TV screen. Relatives shifted their gaze from Cody to the television screen, their faces changing as they took in the evidence displayed. "This is the truth. Cody betrayed me, lied to gain sympathy, and tried to paint me as the villain. But not everything went according to his plan." The relatives were silent, and even Taylor stood motionless, unable to say a word. Cody collapsed onto the couch, his mouth moving but no words coming out. I fixed a cold stare on him and continued quietly. "So what's your move, Cody? Who's leaving this house? Or maybe you'd rather start a new life with them?" He lowered his head, unable to answer, weighed down by the stares of his relatives. Both Misty and Arya, having had enough of Cody, also left the house. That night, I made up my mind to leave Cody. The price he would pay for underestimating me would be immeasurable. The pain and regret Cody would face from now on wouldn't be caused by me, but by his own actions. Still, even now, he desperately tried to make excuses. "Hey, about today, it's all a misunderstanding. I was just worried about you." I cut him off, looking at him coldly as I asked, "Worried? About what? How does cheating equate to being worried? Are you still trying to make excuses?" Cody hesitated for a moment but quickly tried to push back. "What are you going to do if we get divorced? How will you support yourself?" The moment I heard those words, I smirked internally. Even when cornered, Cody still thought he had control over me, believing I was financially dependent on him. But my resolve was unwavering. You're having an affair too, aren't you? Who is this guy?" Suddenly, Cody pulled out his phone and thrust it in my face, showing me a screen. It was a photo I had posted on social media. In the picture, I was smiling with another man. Cody presented it as proof, accusing me. "This guy, he's your lover, isn't he?" His voice carried a tone of certainty, as if he believed he had finally turned the tables. But I only needed a quick glance at the photo to understand what was going on. "Wait, my lover? That's my cousin." Cody stared at me in disbelief. "Your cousin?" "Yes, my cousin. I took that photo when I visited my family. It's just me spending time with him and his kids. And I posted it on social media." "You jumped to conclusions without checking anything, and now you've embarrassed yourself," I replied with biting sarcasm. Cody's face flushed red, and he couldn't say a word, only staring at the floor. He had realized just how pitiful and ridiculous his situation had become, having presented what he thought was proof, only for it to be a complete misunderstanding. Yet he didn't give up. He raised his head and moved closer to me. "Even if you say that, what are you really going to do if we get divorced? You can't survive on your own. How are you going to raise the kids? You have no choice but to rely on me." His words still carried an air of confidence, as if he believed he held all the power. He really thought that I couldn't live without him. "Think whatever you want," I answered calmly. "The truth is, I've been preparing for this for quite some time. I had a feeling you'd eventually try to corner me like this." Cody's face twisted in shock, his mouth hanging open like a fool. "What are you talking about? I've been slowly learning computer skills and started working from home, making sure you wouldn't find out. I've built up my income, so I don't need to rely on you anymore." He was speechless, clearly shaken. "When did you? When? Well, you've been so indifferent to what's going on in our home, haven't you? I've known all along what you were planning. You wanted to control me, but it's too late now." I stared at him with unyielding resolve. Cody slumped back into his seat, his shoulders sagging in defeat. I had no idea you were thinking that far ahead. You underestimated me. But it's over now. Our relationship and your control are finished, I declared, turning my back on him. There was nothing more to say. Wait, Nadia, please, think this over. His voice trembled from behind me, but I had no intention of turning back. Everything you did to me will come back to you. You're going to realize just how many people you've hurt with your lies and betrayals. He had nothing left to say, and angrily scratched his head in frustration. There was no trace of emotion left in the way I looked at him now. But then, in a fit of rage, Cody yelled at me, shaking with fury. Everyone's out to get me. You, that guy, those women, you're all in on it. You set me up. His voice was panicked, but I looked back at him calmly. Set you up? When did I ever do that? You misunderstood about my cousin, didn't you? As for the women, everything that happened is your doing. Cody couldn't muster a response, only glaring at me with frustration. I took a breath, and then continued quietly. Oh right. Since we're here, I might as well tell you how I met her, Misty. Cody's face stiffened for a moment. It was clear that he realized something, as his face started to drain of color. After I realized you were cheating, I began quietly gathering evidence. Around the same time, I got a message on social media from Misty. She didn't know you were married when she was seeing you. And when she found out, she was furious. She came to apologize to me. His eyes were darting around wildly, completely losing control of the situation. Misty apparently gave you a lot of money, didn't she? Wait, I don't know anything about that. Oh really? Didn't you lie to her, saying it was for the family or for the future? She's lying. I don't know what she's talking about. His desperate lie was transparent. I ignored his pitiful defense, but she quickly figured it out. That you were married to me, and that you had been deceiving her, hiding it all along. He tried to come up with a retort, but the words seemed to escape him. So Misty decided to team up with me. Not only did she apologize to me, but she also swore revenge on you. Together, we started collecting evidence of your infidelity. But as we dug deeper, we discovered something. His face grew more tense, the panic in his eyes more apparent. How many women have you deceived? Deceived. It's only Misty and Arya. Don't lie, I know about all of them. Every single woman you've manipulated and used. That's right. His affairs didn't just involve Misty and Arya. There were 5 women in total that I had managed to uncover. Finally, Cody exploded in anger. You did all this. You went that far. Of course, you betrayed me, and you hurt these women too. So I decided to join forces with them to make sure you couldn't escape. He stood there, despair etched across his face. He finally realized that there was no way out for him. He was trapped, and all he could do was tremble as the truth of his actions came crashing down on him. He began to understand the irreversible damage he had caused, and that there was no turning back now. Cody, it's over. You're going to disappear from my life, and you're never coming back. You're going to pay for every lie you've told, and for every person you've hurt. My words pierced through him like a knife. He was utterly defeated. I cast him one final cold glance and spoke with unwavering resolve. We won't forgive you. No matter how much you suffer from now on, it's all your own doing. Cody crumpled to the floor, looking up at me, utterly broken. Finally, he realized just how foolish he had been, but it was too late. No matter how much he panicked or lashed out, it was all over. The women he had deceived had united against him, bound by a shared sense of betrayal. The fire of vengeance had been burning strong, and now, all the evidence we gathered would be revealed before his entire family. I asked Margaret to gather the relatives together. Everyone was there, Taylor, the whole family. Even Misty and Arya had been invited. Usually, the relatives were loud and chatty, but on that day, there was a heavy atmosphere, as if they could sense something ominous in the air. Everyone sat in silence. I'd like everyone to hear what I have to say today. I quietly began to speak. All eyes turned toward me at once. Cody looked startled for a moment, but he quickly composed his expression, waiting for me to continue. The truth is, Cody has been hiding something from all of us. Carefully choosing my words, I began explaining to the gathered family. The room fell completely silent, and everyone held their breath. I took out my phone and started showing the photos and screenshots I had prepared. These were undeniable proof of Cody's affairs and misconduct. This is what he's been hiding from us. I continued explaining calmly, but I could see the expressions on the relatives' faces grow more and more severe. Margaret was on the verge of tears, and Taylor's face turned bright red. They all stared at the images displayed in front of them. "I can't believe he did this," Margaret whispered, her voice trembling. She looked back and forth between the screen and Cody, her face filled with disbelief. Cody sat there silently, but the fear was clearly visible on his face. "Cody, what were you thinking?" Taylor shouted angrily, slamming his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the room, and everyone gasped. Cody remained silent, his head down, his body radiating fear. From around the room, the relatives started murmuring their disapproval. Their faces showed a mixture of shock, anger, and deep disappointment. The evidence we had brought forward struck a chord in their hearts. And that's not all. There's more. I revealed even more evidence. It showed him pretending to be on business trips while actually spending time with his mistress, and data proving he had misused company funds for personal expenses. The relatives were speechless now, staring silently at the screen. "It's over, Cody," I coldly declared. Every eye in the room turned toward Cody. Unable to bear the pressure, he sank deeper into his chair. At that moment, Taylor stood up, his voice rising with anger as he faced Cody. "Cody, you've disgraced the family name. How could you do something so shameful? What were you thinking?" His voice trembled with rage. Taylor approached Cody and shouted once more, "Don't disgrace this family any further. Get out of here right now." Cody's face turned red, but he couldn't say anything in response to Taylor's words. The relatives nodded in agreement with Taylor, their eyes full of condemnation toward him. Cody could only shrink under the weight of Taylor's anger, but perhaps, somewhere deep down, he still believed there were people on his side. After all, Taylor had once sided with Cody in trying to drive me out. Taylor had a clear disdain for women, and had always treated me with cold indifference. When Cody tried to paint me as the villain, Taylor readily agreed and turned against me. "Nadia, are you fulfilling your duties as Cody's wife? Are you doing anything to shame him? We don't need women here who defy their men." Taylor had thrown such words at me, trying to pressure me into submission. But now, his arrogant attitude had crumbled completely. With Cody's wrongdoings exposed, Taylor's pride had also been deeply wounded. But that wasn't the end of it. Misty, along with the other women, had decided to utterly destroy Cody. One woman exposed his identity on social media, and the information spread rapidly, further tarnishing his reputation. Misty spoke in a cold voice. "Cody, I've revealed all the lies you've told. There's nothing left to hide." Cody paled at Misty's words, trembling as he tried to say something in his defense. "Misty, how could you do something like this?" But Misty cut him off. "Considering what you did to me, this isn't nearly enough. I won't be fooled by your lies anymore." Desperate, Cody tried to make excuses, but not a single person believed him. The cycle of revenge was far from over. Another woman appeared at a bar where Cody was drinking with his coworkers. She suddenly shouted, "You cheating bastard," and threw a beer in his face. His colleagues, shocked and unable to understand what was happening, watched as Cody's complexion turned pale. With nowhere left to run, Cody could only stand frozen. The final blow came when his affair was exposed, along with the fact that he had faked business trips to spend time with his mistress and tried to embezzle company funds. We had gathered undeniable evidence of this. We presented it to his company, bringing his fraudulent activities into the light. I looked at Cody with a cold gaze, and threw my words at him. "Cody, you did all this betraying your family and deceiving your company. It's all over." Cody could only stare at me, speechless. His face was that of a man who had lost everything. At the company, his mistresses were deliberately set up to meet, causing a scene in front of his colleagues. As a result, he was forced to leave his company and was eventually arrested by the police. Having lost everything, his mistresses abandoned him, leaving him completely isolated. He lost his job, his social standing, and found himself in a pitiful situation. Taylor, filled with disappointment and anger, addressed Cody with his final words. "Cody, don't ever come back to this house again. Don't bring any more shame to the family." It was at that moment Cody finally seemed to realize that he had lost everything. Finally, the divorce papers were filed. After the divorce, I demanded alimony in the divorce proceedings. Of course, Misty also demanded repayment of the large sums of money she had given to Cody, but we both knew he had no ability to pay. Cody's parents ended up paying a large lump sum to settle things, begging us not to cause any more trouble. But by then, my heart had already turned cold. I had decided to cut all ties with them, including the rest of the relatives. "This is the end." I whispered those words quietly. His life had crumbled, just as he had destroyed others. And I was ready to sever all connections and start my new life. From that day onward, I decided to cut off all contact with Cody's family and relatives. I would never engage with them again. I had finally gained my freedom. Free from his control, I could now forge my own path in life. That realization gave me new strength. After the painful days with Cody had come to an end, I began to live a fulfilling life in a new environment. The heavy burden that had weighed on my heart was gone, and each day felt surprisingly light. It was as if my new life had been waiting for me, welcoming me with open arms. Even my relationship with Misty had transformed remarkably. After everything that had happened, she and I became something like best friends. At first, it was a little awkward, but as I saw her sincerity and straightforward personality, I naturally opened up to her. One day, Misty said to me, "I'm really sorry. In the beginning, I didn't know anything about you." I smiled and shook my head. "Don't worry about it anymore. What's more important is that we're walking through our new lives together now." We nodded to each other, promising to continue building our newfound friendship. My children, too, are now happier and living in a more stable environment. By becoming stronger myself, they also felt secure and could enjoy their daily lives again. Each time I saw their smiling faces, I was reassured that I had made the right choice. As for Cody, his downfall is nothing but the consequence of his own betrayals. He has lost the peaceful everyday life that will never return, and I'm sure he is now paying the price. No matter how much he regrets his actions, there is no longer a place for him in our lives. Things are better this way, I tell myself, as I continue walking forward. With my new friend Misty by my side, I intend to enjoy the rest of my life to the fullest.
Sorry for the bother. The thing is, He began. The moment I learned the truth, I was filled with surprise, gratitude toward my father-in-law, and a sense of liberation. My name is Charlotte. I've devoted my life to my family as a wife and a mother, cherishing each day. But problems arose outside of my family life. I used to spend joyful times with my family alone. I met my husband Joseph at a club in college. We hit it off, started dating, and eventually got married. We have a son, but he's working in the city as a professional, so he only returns home once every 6 months. Ever since it became just the two of us, Joseph and I looked forward to revisiting places we went when we first dated. How about going to Six Flags tomorrow on our day off? Now here's a question. What did Charlotte do 23 years ago at that amusement park? Did I do something? Caught off guard by Joseph's sudden question, my mind raced to remember. Something from that long ago. Oh, I remember. After riding the teacups, I got dizzy and fell into a nearby pond. That's correct. I was so embarrassed, I wanted to pretend I didn't know you. How mean. Why did you let go of my hand then? Laughing about my embarrassing moments like this has become a treasured pastime. Even when it's just the two of us at home, the atmosphere never darkens. We lived a happy life. Due to Joseph's shift work, there were days we hardly saw each other, but since I adjusted my work to match his schedule, I rarely felt lonely. However, then, a major event that would drastically affect our lives happened. Our father-in-law was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. Surgery was difficult, and the 5-year survival rate was less than 2%. A dire illness. Both Joseph and I were filled with such hatred, our hands clenched into fists. When a loved one suddenly falls ill, you wonder what you can do, what's the best course of action, and your mind goes blank. Joseph has a sister living in the neighboring town, but she doesn't know about this yet. Deciding to inform her soon, Joseph picked up his smartphone and made a call. After 7 rings, a loud, shrill voice echoed through the receiver. "Why are you calling now of all times?" "I'm busy preparing dinner." "We have something important to talk about. We'll come over tomorrow evening." Despite her complaints about the sudden development, this wasn't the time to worry about such things. After conveying the necessary information, Joseph hung up. Joseph normally didn't pay much mind to his free-spirited sister-in-law, who rarely shows up at family gatherings and doesn't quite mesh well with his personality. But this time, things were different. The next day, we hastily took the day off and headed to her house. When we rang the doorbell, her husband, not the friendliest of individuals, was the first to answer. He opened the door without changing his expression and looked at us with an intimidating stare. Not a pleasant feeling. In the living room, she cast a cold glance at us. Despite not having seen each other for 6 months, she treated us worse than strangers. Amidst this, Joseph fixed his intense gaze on her. Then, as he informed her about their father's illness, she uttered unbelievable words from her mouth. "So what? You came all the way here to say that? This sickness is Dad's fault. Don't tell me you came here expecting me to take care of him?" Instead of expressing sadness about her father's illness, she seemed more concerned about avoiding any inconvenience to herself. It was my first time seeing a daughter look down on her father, who didn't choose to get sick, and I felt embarrassed for her as a fellow human being. My anger peaked, and even my parents, who had planned to talk calmly, were getting worn down. "That's too much. You're his daughter, aren't you? Even though a loved one is suffering, you can be so indifferent. If the roles were reversed, you would definitely be upset." I thought she would reflect a bit on what I said and quiet down, but I underestimated her. "Don't talk nonsense. There's no rule that says I have to look after him because I'm his daughter. If you're so concerned about it, why don't you do it? Joseph is his child, just like I am." Indeed, my husband Joseph is also father-in-law's child, and it's not right to put the responsibility on sister-in-law alone. Because she's so irresponsible, I thought she should step up and take care of father-in-law at a time like this. But people like her are good at justifying their behavior. What she said wasn't wrong, and I figured it was futile to argue any further, so I dropped it. Although we were reluctant to leave father-in-law to sister-in-law, who clearly didn't want to deal with this, we, as working couple, didn't have the time, unlike sister-in-law who was a housewife. If Joseph had to quit his job, it would be better for our finances if I quit mine, but I found fulfillment in my current job. As I was considering my options, sister-in-law revealed her trump card with a triumphant look on her face. "By the way, Charlotte, you have a nursing certification, don't you?" You know more than an amateur like me. I think you should be the one to take care of him. It's reassuring for the patient to have a professional take care of them, isn't it? I had worked as a CNA in a nursing home 15 years ago. Having earned a nursing certification so that I could take care of my parents if something happened, since I'm an only child. Knowing it would be futile to pursue sister-in-law any further, we decided to go home and think things over. I'm sorry you have such an unfeeling and troublesome sister-in-law. She's not the type to reflect on herself, even if I said something, so I couldn't say anything. No, it's okay. I knew that no matter what you said, it wouldn't change anything. It's not your fault, Joseph. What should we do? I can tell you love your job, and I would feel bad taking that away from you just because my dad got sick. But even in a situation like this, it made me happy to see Joseph thinking so much about me. But unlike sister-in-law, I'm not heartless. I wanted to cherish every minute of father-in-law's life. It's okay, don't worry about me. I can figure out my job situation later. The most important thing is, I met you thanks to your dad, so I want to express my gratitude. Holding Joseph's hand, I saw his eyes welling up with regret. Let's face this together. Seeing Joseph's expression lighten a bit, I geared up to tackle the bigger problem. The biggest issue here is money, isn't it? While chatting with Joseph, it turned out that my father-in-law had only signed up for the cheapest insurance available. That meant the guaranteed expenses would be minimal, and we'd have to pay out of pocket for necessities. Well, his daughters definitely won't offer to chip in, I said. And they should be contributing more if they're not going to help take care of him. Their lack of dependability was disheartening, even though I hadn't expected much to begin with. Caring for a sick person requires mustering up your own motivation when it's at rock bottom. It's not an easy task. It was a battle against myself. The next day, I decided to step away from my work in the bar kitchen, where I'd enjoyed the camaraderie and hard work alongside the younger staff. When I explained the situation, everyone was understanding, though their disappointment at my leaving was palpable. Please come back when you can, they said. Those words gave me strength and became my motivation for what lay ahead. With that, I headed straight to the hospital where father-in-law was waiting. Arriving at the hospital, I saw father-in-law from behind, quietly facing away from the entrance. I couldn't tell if he was staring out the window or sleeping, but his loneliness and sadness were palpable, and I couldn't find the words to speak just yet. After about 30 seconds, I took a deep breath and walked closer to father-in-law. As I tried to figure out what to say and how to say it, father-in-law spoke first. Charlotte, thank you for coming. I'm sorry to be such a burden. His face softened as he greeted me, but quickly, his eyes filled with worry, and his expression darkened. He was so considerate despite his illness, and it angered me that his own daughter, sister-in-law, couldn't bother to be here. Please, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I knew I couldn't understand the pain of his illness, but I wanted to support him as best I could. Once I'd finished my morning chores, I'd take a 40-minute journey to the hospital each day. I'd always driven to work, but now I opted for the bus to maximize my time with father-in-law, even if it meant cutting into my sleep. The bus rides were soothing, providing a brief respite and rejuvenation for the challenging days ahead. As I watched father-in-law's vitality diminish day by day, I devoted my heart and energy to making him comfortable. The medical procedures, including IVs and medication, were necessary but not simple. Unlike a routine for a cold, a catheter had to be placed near his heart via a surgical incision below his collarbone. The sight was distressing, but it was the best we could do for father-in-law, who wasn't a candidate for surgery. Try this. I offered, handing him a Walkman. Father-in-law loved karaoke and had even won local competitions with his amazing voice. He used to practice daily by singing along to his CD player, but his hospitalization had put an end to that. Wanting him to keep his passion for music alive, I loaded his favorite songs onto the Walkman as a gift. He immediately put on the headphones and pressed play. His face instantly brightened. I thought I wouldn't be able to listen to music anymore. Thank you so much. Now, I have to win another karaoke competition when I get discharged. Seeing father-in-law smile, I felt a bit relieved. Even amidst the unfamiliar hospital atmosphere and daily tough treatments, father-in-law never complained. In fact, he was more worried about me. Sorry for causing you trouble and expenses. I wish we had traveled more with you and Joseph. I've always wanted to go to that place. Then he took out his mobile phone and showed me a picture. There, countless lavender flowers were blooming in all directions. Wow, that's beautiful. This place used to be nothing but fields. But after urban development, it turned into such a beautiful spot. This flower is my favorite. Seeing father-in-law's eyes sparkling, I wanted him to get better even more urgently. From then on, I decided to stop by a florist before going to the hospital for father-in-law who loved flowers. After you left, I felt lonely. But having flowers around changes things. I found myself talking to the flowers, and the nurses looked at me like I was strange. We had a good laugh over this. 2 weeks later, a feeding tube was attached to father-in-law who had been eating normally up until then. You could visibly see his body turning more yellow. His voice, calling my name, lost its energy. I had to suppress my fear and act strong, which was tough. I hadn't expected him to become bedridden in just 2 weeks after the cancer diagnosis. I was painfully aware of the dreadfulness of the disease. I wanted to say, "Stay strong, Dad." But I knew he would be the most frustrated. He probably didn't want to admit that he was weak and would be blaming his body for not listening to him. His smile, showing strength at times, was a saving grace for me. I would often excuse myself to the restroom, unable to hold back my tears. I'd wash my face with cold water to cool my flushed face, and then return to his room. Joseph also spent some quality father-son time with him during his breaks or on his days off. I would enjoy some quiet time alone at a cafe in the hospital during those moments. Father-in-law, who was always kind to me, seemed even happier when talking with his son. So I decided to give them as much time together as possible. An hour later, when I returned to the room, the two were discussing insurance money. I want my modest insurance money to go to Charlotte, who's taking great care of me. Father-in-law said, turning towards me. He had changed the beneficiary to ensure that I would get the money in case something happened to him. That's when the hospital room door flung open with a bang, and sister-in-law stormed in, hurling abuse. I heard your conversation. Why did you change the beneficiary to her? It used to be me. Change it back immediately, or I'll spread the word that you're the worst father ever. Both Joseph and I couldn't believe the childish words she was saying. However, to our surprise, father-in-law defended sister-in-law. All right, I got it. If you feel so strongly about it, I'll change the beneficiary back to you. But in return, promise me you'll stop saying hurtful things to Charlotte. She's the wife of my beloved son Joseph. I won't tolerate her getting hurt, no matter what happens. Perhaps sister-in-law really loved money, to the point of obsessing over it. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that's all she thought about. Once the father-in-law said that, the sister-in-law nodded quietly and left the hospital room. I wanted to follow her out of disbelief but was stopped by my husband and the father-in-law, so I reluctantly sat down on a chair in the room. However, I couldn't help but notice something off about their behaviors, leaving me with a big question mark floating in my mind. "Hey, why are you guys laughing?" In response to my question, my father-in-law began to explain the truth between chuckles. That sister-in-law girl really believed all my assets were tied up in insurance and went home. "Your plan worked well, Dad." Then my father-in-law took out 3 bank cards from a locked drawer and handed them to me. He told me they held a fortune beyond my wildest imagination, which left me speechless with surprise. I knew the father-in-law was wealthy, but a new question popped up in my mind. Why was he only enrolled in a single, minimal insurance plan? However, it was a decent plan that would give him $10 million in the event of his death. "All my assets are on these cards. I know I don't have much time left, so I want you two to use it. I'm sorry for all the expenses I've put you through with my hospital bills, flowers, and clothes." No, the money we spent isn't a big deal at all. We can't accept such a huge sum. It would feel like a punishment. Just take it as a token of gratitude for taking care of me. And remember, keep this a secret from her. It seemed that, just like us, the father-in-law didn't think highly of the sister-in-law due to her selfish behavior and lack of family consideration. That's why he had decided to leave her only the bare minimum if anything happened to him. "Won't you accept my offer?" Faced with their earnest gazes, I found it hard to refuse. I felt guilty but agreed nonetheless. 2 weeks later, in accordance with the father-in-law's wish to spend his remaining time in a more home-like environment receiving palliative care, we moved him to a hospice. We contacted the sister-in-law just in case, but her only response was a curt "good for you." It was truly an eye-rolling moment. Despite the sister-in-law's absence, the warm conversation between the 3 of us continued. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble with my secret. But there's one more thing. Did you know my father was Martinho Aaron?" "What? You mean the famous singer? I've seen him on the hit nostalgia song show. Are you serious? That's news to me." This was big news. Even Joseph didn't know. Apparently, it was not public knowledge that the father-in-law was Martinho Aaron's son. He was a secret child, and because Martinho Aaron was a public figure, it was kept under wraps. However, Martinho Aaron apparently doted on the father-in-law behind the scenes and shared his wealth with him before he passed away. "When I'm gone, go here." Saying that, the father-in-law handed us a piece of paper. It only had an address written on it, and we had no idea what it was about. He kept evading our questions for more details. A month later, after living his final days at the hospice, the father-in-law peacefully passed away. "Father-in-law!" I sobbed, calling for him one more time, but there was no answer. Gratitude welled up in me for how he had always treated me like his own daughter, and tears streamed down my face like a waterfall. As we stood by father-in-law's side, leaning on Joseph for support, we watched the doctor and nurses do their work. At the funeral, sister-in-law arrived and began crying loudly. A stark contrast to the attitude she had shown us previously. She was talking to the attendees as though she cared deeply for her father. I wanted to tell everyone that all sister-in-law wanted was money, but doing so wouldn't make father-in-law happy. So, I decided to think of sister-in-law as a stranger, which somewhat eased my mind. Of course, after the funeral, sister-in-law didn't interfere with us, and we didn't bother with her either. A week after father-in-law's passing, Joseph and I headed to the location written on the piece of paper father-in-law had given us. The sight that met us was astonishing. "What is this?" Both Joseph's and my voices overlapped. Before us stood an enormous, opulent mansion like nothing we'd ever seen before. Unsure of how to proceed, we decided to walk around the vast gardens first. A woman emerged from the house, and I was so surprised I fell backwards. "I'm sorry, I didn't think anyone was here." The woman in front of us wore a kind smile as she invited us into the house. The interior was so extravagant, with marble, diamonds, and ornate decorations, it felt like we had stepped into a dream. The woman guided us to a room with plush chairs where we sat down. As I hurried to understand the reality of the situation, the woman began to speak slowly. "I've been the caretaker of this house. Your father owned this place and used it to entertain his friends from time to time. Every time someone would visit, I would come to assist. However, there's no longer a need for me to come here. Your father's final wish was to hand over the ownership of this house to you, Joseph and Charlotte." After saying this, she handed us a set of keys, a map of the house, and a notebook detailing the location of various valuables. She added, "I'm glad to have met the people your father treasured the most. I wish you happiness." After these words, she left. 2 hours of investigating later, we found a letter from father-in-law in a desk drawer in the study. The letter stated that we could live in or sell the house as we wished. There was no way for us to express our gratitude to father-in-law, who left us not only a fortune but also this grand mansion, as he was no longer with us. All we could do was continue living in this world, for father-in-law's sake. The following month, we decided to go to a hotel father-in-law had wanted to visit for 15 years. On our way, we played father-in-law's favorite music and spoke to a photo of him. "Father-in-law, we're finally going on a trip together. Let's have a blast today," I said. Suddenly, a leaf fell and stuck to our car window, shaking lightly. It felt like father-in-law had answered us, which made me happy. 3 hours later, we arrived at the historic hotel father-in-law had spoken of, nestled in a quiet spot surrounded by peaceful nature. Photos of several past presidents adorned the walls of the hotel, signifying its recognition and importance. After we were shown to our spacious room, we sat down on the sofa, savoring the welcome drinks and fresh fruits. It's been a while since we've been able to enjoy a leisurely trip like this. "Yeah, well, Dad's with us today." It had been a long time since Joseph and I had shared a look, and I couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. After enjoying the spa and exploring the hotel, it was finally time for the meal we were looking forward to. Since we had ordered meals for 3, the room service staff who brought it to our room was quite surprised. When we explained the situation, they nodded in understanding with a kind smile. After talking about my father-in-law for a while, they even offered us a bottle of wine on the house. "Oh, this is delicious. Just what Dad would say," I mused. Being an infrequent drinker, I got quite tipsy that day, until my memory blurred. However, my husband Joseph, who is good with alcohol, remembered my actions and told me about them the next morning. "Last night, you kept stroking Dad's picture and saying I love you. I can count on one hand the number of times you've said that to me. I was a bit envious of Dad," he said, laughing. We shared this humorous anecdote as we drove along a different route than the day before. "Oh, here!" There, lavender was blooming as far as the eye could see. There was no mistake, this was the place my father-in-law had shown us in the photo. Embraced by the gentleness of the lavender color, I felt invigorated, not just entrapped in sadness but eager to face forward. "Dad told me once that Mom used to gaze at the lavender a lot before she passed away." Realizing that my father-in-law had brought us here out of love for his wife touched my heart deeply. Since then, we've started bringing lavender to the grave. The lavender has become a precious flower for our family, warming our hearts and bodies. Once we returned to our normal lives, we started spending our weekends in the luxurious house my father-in-law left us. Thanks to this, every week felt like a vacation. My love for Joseph deepened, and my gratitude to my father-in-law overflowed. I can't count how many times I wet my clothes with tears of joy. Fast forward a month later. It was a weekday around 7 p.m. After Joseph came home and took a bath, I was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. When I checked the monitor, I saw my sister-in-law. She rarely comes to our house. I wanted to pretend we weren't home, but with Joseph's car in the driveway and the lights on, that wasn't possible. As I was hesitating, the impatient sister-in-law began to pound on the door. Worried about the neighbor's eyes, I turned off the stove and hurried to the door. As soon as I opened the door, my sister-in-law started yelling before the door fully closed. "Where the hell are you two on the weekends?" It seems she came to our house over the weekend, but Joseph and I were not there. I couldn't tell her why, so I remained sister-in-lawant, while she glared at me threateningly. All right, come this way." I didn't want her lingering at the front door, so I led her to the living room, intending to let Joseph handle her. Just then, Joseph, fresh from his bath, came to the entrance, and I sighed in relief. "Sis, what brings you here around dinner time?" I appreciated Joseph's forthright approach as I watched the two of them. He led her to the living room, and the conversation continued. "I came to light incense for Dad at the family altar over the weekend, but you two were nowhere to be found." Her self-righteous tone still irked me. Then, out of the blue, Joseph dropped a bombshell. "I actually spend my weekends dating Charlotte, trying to pass on all the love that Dad gave me. Sorry if this doesn't sit well with you, a sister who has to deal with her husband being lovey-dovey with another woman." My voice and sister-in-law's overlapped in shock. "What?" Sister-in-law was visibly shaken by this unexpected revelation. "There's no way! What are you talking about? There's no way he could be interested in any other woman but me." Immediately after, Joseph took out his mobile phone from his pocket and showed a picture to sister-in-law. Curiosity piqued, I peeked at the photo and sure enough, it was sister-in-law's husband arm in arm with another woman. Sister-in-law's fury and sadness reached a peak, and she seemed to stop caring about me and Joseph. As soon as she got the picture forwarded from Joseph, she stormed off. The next day and the day after, when I asked Joseph, who didn't talk about sister-in-law, what happened to the couple, he said he didn't know because he had blocked sister-in-law's contact. "I don't consider her a sibling anymore. All I want is to live a peaceful daily life with you." Fast forward a month. While out shopping with Joseph as usual, we bumped into a neighbor from where sister-in-law lives. Apparently, the sister-in-law couple was in the midst of divorce discussions. With the husband completely out of love with sister-in-law and a reluctant sister-in-law still not wanting to split despite the infidelity. As much as it sounds like a tough situation, I've decided to stop worrying about sister-in-law and just focus on living my own life. As long as I have Joseph, I have nothing to fear. Father-in-law always used to say, "The key to happiness is to laugh a lot and sing out loud." I'm going to go back to my old job soon, but I plan on adhering to father-in-law's advice and enjoying life to the fullest, even for father-in-law's sake. Joseph and I both love to sing, and we've promised to participate in a karaoke competition together. Our goal? To make it to the same podium that father-in-law did, to reach the top. As we let our singing voices resonate towards the heavens.